What up, y'all? DCFAYGOGUY. Today we are going to be reviewing Twiztid's rock debut album, Unlikely Prescription. This album right here, I don't even know where to start with this album. This album is, I don't want to say divisive, but it's definitely very selective among the amount of people that enjoy this album. They released it back in 2021. And from my own consensus with this album, you've got people that either like it or they absolutely hate it. You've got people that feel like this was Twiztid selling out and trying to appeal to more of a mainstream audience. And you got people that are like, this is Twiztid doing what Twiztid always does. I'm somebody who very firmly, I don't fully feel one way or the other about it. I'm definitely more in the camp of Twiztid has always had rock. Do I think they should have done a full rock album? Sure, why not? I think it's really interesting, and I think it's unique, and it's something that I enjoy when artists experiment. I have a lot of thoughts when it comes to this album particularly, though. My first several listens to Unlikely Prescription, I was in the exact same camp of everybody else where I was like, this isn't it. I don't like it. This is not what I wanted to hear from Twiztid. It actually took them being announced on the Coal Chamber Fiend with the Friends tour last year, back in 2024. It was going to be Fear Factory, Coal Chamber, Twiztid, I think Wednesday 13. I immediately was excited. I wanted to go see Fear Factory. Huge Fear Factory fan myself. So when they announced that that tour was going to happen, I was like, all right, I'm going to go give Unlikely Prescription one more shot. I had the CD, I bought it just kind of in blind faith of maybe I'll enjoy it, but every time I listened to it, I just didn't. That time, something finally snapped, something finally clicked, and I honestly think I was in the right mindset to really listen to it. There's things about this project in particular that I think Twiztid could have really done differently to make this album more digestible for people, and maybe not. This is just kind of where my headspace went immediately. And I think the very first thing that they should have done with it is not do it under the name of Twiztid. I think that doing this, they should have called themselves something else. And quite honestly, I think their rock stuff, the perfect name is the name of this album. They should call themselves Unlikely Prescription when they're doing rock stuff. And the reason I say that is you've got too many juggalos that have followed Twiztid for years. They've been doing this for, God, over 20 years now. Most people know them for doing horrorcore and rap. Yes, they've had rock elements in their music, but they've never full-fledged gone rock. They did put out Mutant back in 2005, which had a lot of rock tracks. Throughout a lot of their discography, they would have rock tracks, but they've never put out a full-fledged album that was all rock and roll. Rock, hard rock, whatever. Alternative rock, the rock category, the rock genre. So I think a lot of juggalos or a lot of fans that are just kind of used to Twiztid only sprinkling a little bit in probably went into this just not vibing at all with it. And I was no different. And I think it's because going into it, you're expecting a Twiztid sound. You're expecting rap. You're expecting rock every now and again. And you're expecting kind of the emotional, more heartfelt songs that they're known to do. So I think calling themselves Unlikely Prescription, and honestly, the name title is pretty perfect for them to try to dip their toes into the rock world, which I know is something that they've talked about wanting to do, is have more of a presence in that rock world, especially with them doing Warped Tour back in 2018, with them doing more kind of festivals like that. I get and I can see them wanting to do that. But the problem that I see is they're going to go into the rock world as Twiztid, and when people are going to go look for them, they're going to find the rap shit. They're going to find all of that and be like, no, I'm not really a big fan of this. I think they're trying to blend too much, and I think their discography is too sparse for them to try to appeal to this new fan base as well as still appeal to the former fan base. Which, and when I say that, that makes it sound super selloutish, but I know they're wanting to reach a new audience, and they're still going to put out music for their older audience, the audience that's been there with them for years. I feel like going into this project, calling it a Twiztid album just really kind of put the wrong mindset for me and expectations for me. I've said it before, going and looking for a Twiztid album, Unlikely Prescription is not the first one I think of. I think of a lot of their rap shit, which again does have rock sprinkled in it. But when I'm going to go listen to a Twiztid album, I want to listen to a Twiztid album. And also the kind of the swing of the opposite side. When I'm in the mood for rock and roll, I'm not always thinking about Twiztid. I'm scrolling through, I'm looking for, Collective Soul, I'm looking for Fear Factory, I'm looking for Korn, maybe a little bit of Metallica. Those are the kind of things that I'm looking for when I'm in the mood for rock. That has changed just a little bit now that I'm aware of, what I like about Unlikely Prescription. But I really truly think that calling themselves Twiztid and putting out this music as Twiztid, regardless of the fact that it is them and it's them doing something that they've always sprinkled in their music, I just think the mindset going into this album was very misconstrued. I think people went in with the wrong idea of what they were getting themselves into, and I think vice versa. Rock fans coming in and trying to expand out into their other discography are going to have the exact same reaction. So first and foremost, that is the biggest thing that as I listen to this, I always just think like, this sounds good, but it's not Twiztid. This is not a Twiztid album to me. It's Jamie and Paul doing rock music, but it does not feel like Twiztid. It does not sound like Twiztid. That is the biggest thing about this that I think they did wrong with this album, is they called it a Twiztid album. And quite honestly, like, pulling out the book real quick, you look at like this big fold out here in the middle, it's like Unlikely Prescription. This feels like a band kind of banner that you would have at a show. You know what I mean? Like, it just, to me, it feels like they had something so close, but they went this way with it. And I really wholeheartedly think changing the name of it and calling themselves something different would have been the way to go. And I feel like Tech Nine understood that when he was wanting to do Kibosh, which was supposed to be him and Chris Calico doing rock music. I think he understood enough that he wanted to do it as a different name in a different name. I know he put out Therapy because Kibosh just never took off. I think maybe to some certain degree, even Violent J knew that, and that's why he used Zug Island as his platform to really, really go in with the rock, which Zug Island is more of like a nice blend, especially if you get into Cracked Tiles. So I think that was a direction they should have went with it, and they didn't. So all of that aside, I spent damn near 8 minutes just purely talking about the fact that they should have called it something different. I want to get in and I want to talk about this music. Like I said, started when I first listened to it, it just did not click with me. Finally getting into it, it's really started to click with me. And honestly, I feel like Twiztid did a very good job. Jamie and Paul, I might just call them Jamie and Paul going forward. Jamie and Paul did a really good job coming up with really good catchy hooks. Going through and looking at the production, I'm honestly surprised to see the different names that they had as producers. A little bit surprised that they didn't just stick with one producer and have them produce the whole thing to give it more maybe of a cohesive sound. But there's definitely a lot of tracks on here that I think have good catchy hooks. There's a lot of really great instrumentation in there. There's a part on Confused where like you get this, they love to hate us, and you hear this, dun, dun, I'll be the one you hate. You hear the fucking drums, I'm like, ooh, that itches my brain. They did really good as far as the musical side of it goes. I actually have really come around to this album a lot, and I really do enjoy it. Again, it's not the first Twiztid album that comes to mind when I'm like, I feel like listening to some Twiztid today. But it has definitely started to become like something when I'm listening, like when I'm wanting to listen to rock music, it's definitely something that pops up in my head now. So going in, I want to give you guys my top 5 tracks, and my top 5 tracks are Confused. It's been a long time now since I felt I was in control. What would it take for me to try to video reality? Rose Petal. So gather all of those dark thoughts and your mistakes and your inhibitions. It's time to explain to the world who we are again. Are we the reason? Perfect Problem. Do you listen to what they tell you? Do you listen to what they tell you? Do you listen to what they tell you? I never felt this If I Get Things Right. And World of Pretend. Really, a lot of why I picked these ones is mainly just because of those hooks. Confused is something that I feel like... Confused is probably the one track in this whole album that feels the most like Twiztid, because there's a nice breakdown where you get like a hip-hop beat. It sounds more Twiztid than the rest of it. So it's definitely one that really stood out. And again, like I just said, there's that part where it breaks down and you, they love to hate us. You get that fucking drum in there. It sounds so fucking goddamn good. So really absolutely love that one. Perfect Problem has a nice little kind of break in it where it's like, that like definitely earworms itself into my head. If I Get Things Right just sounds really good. It's got a nice tempo. It's a rock fucking track. One of the things that I really like about If I Get Things Right, it kind of, and when I say this, I don't want to give like the wrong impression, but one of my favorite Metallica tracks is Whiskey in a Jar. And one of the reasons is the consistent tempo that track maintains throughout. I love the guitars. I love the drums on that. And that's exactly how it feels with If I Get Things Right. It's a consistent drum and guitar riff that just maintains that tempo throughout the whole thing. There's some tracks that I like when they break it up, but if it's got the right tempo and it's got the right everything that itches and that itch just keeps going, it's like someone just takes and they're like rubbing your head and you're just like, ah. Every so often you get tracks like that. If I Get Things Right is one of those tracks. And World of Pretend, it just really feels like a really good closer track for the album. To me, it kind of fits in a little bit of the vein of what Twiztid normally writes music about. So I definitely enjoyed that. Like I said, most of this album, this album has actually grown on me quite a bit. The first several listens, just, it wasn't there for me. But it is something that I enjoy now. The rare often time that I'm like really wanting to rock out, this is definitely something that pops up in my mind now. I really firmly, wholeheartedly think if they would have called it different, like if they would have made this music under a different name, maybe it would have helped them, maybe it wouldn't have, but I think that was a direction that perhaps they should have gone. And maybe it's something that it's a direction that they can go in the future, maybe. You know, they've obviously got Welcome to Your Funeral getting ready to drop. It's still under the Twiztid name, so I guess we'll see how that album sounds, and maybe I'll carry that sentiment into that album as well when we finally drop our review for it. But if you have listened to Unlikely Prescription and you are one of the rare ones that enjoys it, tell me down below what it is you like about it. What are your favorite tracks? And if you didn't like the album, I would say just don't comment, because I don't think there's anything nice to really say to where you can stay respectful. So if you don't have anything nice to say, I would probably say just, maybe don't even leave a comment at all. But if you did enjoy this album, tell me down below what you guys liked about it. I thank you guys for watching, and I will see you guys next time.